Welcome back to Organist Launchpad. In this video, we'll be talking a little bit more about how to manage the cognitive component of anxiety, specifically how to practice more for performance and not just for skill development. How does one minimize worry and self-doubt and other mental aspects of performance anxiety anyway? Growing up, I thought it was all about practice. After all, they say, practice, practice, practice is what gets you to Carnegie Hall. So I thought that if I increase the number of hours, the number of repetitions, and maybe even the number of perfect repetitions, I would eventually start to feel more comfortable on stage. The problem is that didn't actually do much for me. Yes, I got better, but that trust that I needed on stage still wasn't necessarily there. Sometimes I would practice more and be more effective on stage. Sometimes I'd practice less and be more effective on stage. And then there were times where I'd practice more and be less effective on stage. So none of it really made sense to me. And then I started to learn that trust comes from practice that transfers more effectively to the stage. So for instance, if we just go through a bunch of mindless repetitions in the practice room, that can make us sound better then, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be able to produce what we want on the very first try on stage. And this is where thoughtful, deliberate practice can be really effective, assuming you have a clear goal and that you're also listening to what happens when you play and that you're identifying the problem that you hear, that you're breaking down the mechanics of what causes that problem, and then you're testing out different solutions that might solve that problem, and then be able to articulate what's working and what's not. Deliberate practice is a great foundation and essential, but sometimes it can lead to a preoccupation with accuracy. Accuracy sounds like a good thing, and we do need accuracy, but it can lead to hesitations, careful playing, cautious playing, and focusing on accuracy without expression. Essentially, we can start baking fear and caution into our playing in advance of a performance and end up playing like that when we get on stage. There's a 1997 hockey study which took a bunch of kids and taught them how to hold a hockey stick and stand. Then they were placed 25 feet away from a wall, and then they were asked to hit the wall. One group, though, was asked to aim for a tape on the wall, and their score was given to them in terms of accuracy, how far away the ball that they were hitting landed away from the tape. After each shot, they were encouraged to improve their accuracy. Another group was asked to hit the ball as hard as they could against the wall. There's no target, so there's no missing anything, and their feedback was given to them in miles per hour. And after each hit, they were encouraged to hit even harder on the next one. The researchers were curious about a couple things. On one hand, they were curious how much this practice would improve their accuracy and speed. As you can probably imagine, the accuracy group improved accuracy by quite a bit, 16%. The speed group also improved quite a bit, by 34%. But then the bigger question was, what happens when these little kids have to shoot for both accuracy and speed at the same time? Well, as you can probably guess, the speed group here too shot much more effectively than the accuracy group. They were able to hit the ball 22 miles per hour on average instead of 10 miles per hour on average. And when it came to accuracy, believe it or not, there actually wasn't that much of a difference between the two groups. The speed group accuracy score was about 57 centimeters away from the target. The accuracy group, if anything, they were a little bit worse in accuracy, as their error was about 66 centimeters away from the target. Why did that happen? How could it be that shooting for accuracy led to even worse accuracy and less speed? Well, it turns out that the group that focused on speed had different shot mechanics than the group that focused on accuracy. The speed group had a freer swing, they had a longer backswing, a longer follow-through. Their swing looked more like a regular hockey swing. Whereas the accuracy group, their movements were tighter, their motion was more constrained. Because of all this focus on accuracy, they actually did not develop a real hockey swing. So how can we apply these findings to music? Well, there are a couple different examples of musicians going back many years who have suggested things that I think fit. Martin Krauss was apparently one of Franz Liszt's favorite students, and he was Claudio Rau's teacher. And one of his teaching philosophies was to have his students play difficult passages in many different ways. So faster, slower, louder, softer, different articulations, different keys even, basically playing these passages in ways that they would never play them on stage, but which helped them develop what he called reserves of technique. That way, whatever they needed to do on stage would sound easy, both to them and to the listener. Another example of this, a little more recent, is that of violinist Pamela Frank. She sometimes encourages students to practice with 1,000% expression, to basically play things way more musically than they ever would, which might sound a little bit ridiculous in the practice room, but again makes things much easier on stage. She even has students practice scales musically, because if you think about it, usually when you come across the different components of arpeggios and scales in music, you'll have to play them with inflection. So why does it make sense to play things in the practice room without inflection when we're never going to do that on stage? These are two very simple and actually kind of fun ways of trying to take that hockey study and apply it to music. In the next video, we'll be talking a little bit more about cognitive anxiety, but in terms of practicing specifically for pressure.